The first time Jonas noticed something strange was one ordinary morning. While he was shaving, he was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, a thin layer of steam covering the glass, leaving only his reflection partially visible. He wiped the mirror with the palm of his hand, revealing his tired face. It was then that he saw it. On the other side, something seemed to move. Figure, a shadow that was not his own. He froze, his eyes fixed on the reflection. The shadow approached and soon took shape. The pale face of a girl appeared, as if emerging from the bottom of a murky lake. She stared at him with large, intense eyes, as if she recognized him. Her hair was long and dark, wet and stuck to her pale skin. Jonas blinked a few times, waiting for the vision to disappear, but the girl remained there, moving as if she were a part of him that he could not control. "You see me?" she asked, her voice muffled and distant, as if it were coming from somewhere far beyond the surface of the mirror. Jonas recoiled, nearly slipping on the bathroom floor. He shook his head in confusion and looked back into the mirror. The girl was gone. Only his own reflection stared back at him now, with an expression of pure disbelief. That night, the image of the girl would not leave him. He lay in bed and tried to push the thought away, telling himself it was all just a trick of the light, a momentary hallucination, but deep down, something was bothering him. Who was she, and why did she seem so familiar? In the following days, Jonas avoided the mirror. He avoided the bathroom for longer than necessary and ran past the large mirror in the hallway. But the strange phenomenon persisted in his mind like a spark that would not go out. On the fourth night, after a bout of intense insomnia, he decided to face his fear. At midnight, he approached the bathroom mirror again. The reflection looked ordinary, his own face haggard from lack of sleep, his eyes surrounded by deep dark circles. He waited, feeling his heartbeat fast in his chest, and then she appeared again. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "I am you, Jonas," the girl replied with a sad smile. "Or at least the version of you that was on the other side." "Other side?" Jonas repeated, not understanding. "Yes," she continued. "A version of you who made different choices, who walked a dark path, and now you're trapped. I'm trying to warn you. Something terrible will happen if you continue down this path." Jonas took a step back, his blood running cold. He shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't committed any crimes. No, not yet," she replied. "But it's about to start." In the days that followed, Jonas tried to ignore the warning. He tossed the idea into the pile of his lesser worries, convincing himself that it was nothing more than a stress-induced delusion. But little by little, small coincidences began to occur. That same week, while walking around town, he saw a story in the local paper that intrigued him. A brutal crime had occurred in a nearby neighborhood, the kind of crime that never happened here. He frowned at the report. A man had been found dead, and there was no trace of the killer. The story was brief, without much detail. There was something in the description that made him shiver. That night, the girl appeared again, in the same mirror. This time, she was closer, her expression darker. "You're starting to understand, Jonas," she said. "Every step you take brings you closer to what I've become." Jonas felt an unexpected anger rise inside him. "Stop it! I'm not a criminal. I'm not like you say." "Not yet," she repeated, her eyes filled with pain and resignation. "But every choice you make, every dark thought you allow into your mind, shapes you, Jonas. And once you start, there's no going back." The thought haunted him. He began to doubt himself, revisiting memories of decisions he'd made over the years. Had there ever been a time when he'd chosen the wrong path? At what point did a man stray from his true self? Jonas couldn't stop thinking about the girl and what she had said. He decided he needed to find out more about his own life, his own thoughts. Maybe he was hiding something from himself. He began to observe himself more closely, analyzing every decision he made. One night, as he stared at the mirror, a bold idea crossed his mind. "If you are me," he said, "then you know everything I know." She nodded slowly. "Yes, but I also know what you don't know." Jonas frowned. "How can I get you out of there?" She gave him an enigmatic smile. "You can't, Jonas. I'm a part of you. There's no escape." But Jonas was determined. He couldn't just ignore the warning. He began obsessively researching alternate realities, portals, anything that could explain what was happening. But it all seemed crazy. Still, he felt he had to keep going. That week, he noticed subtle changes in her behavior. He began to feel anger easily and aggression that had not been there before. Small incidents would make his blood boil. A sarcastic comment from a colleague, a driver cutting him off, a line at the supermarket. He felt as if he were slowly transforming into something different, something darker. One night, after a particularly bad day at work, Jonas was walking home when he saw a shadow moving quickly out of the corner of his eye. His heart raced. Was it her again, but outside the mirror? No, that was impossible. He stopped, looked around, but nothing was there. When he got home, he went straight to the mirror. "Why are you doing this to me?" he screamed, his voice reverberating in the small room. She appeared once more, her expression full of sadness. "Because I don't want you to become what I have become." "Then tell me what to do," he screamed desperately. "Stop while you still can. Reject the dark thoughts. Turn away from the anger, the hate. Every choice is a fork in the road. You still have time." But Jonas was tired, exhausted from fighting something he couldn't understand. That night, he left the house in search of something that even he couldn't define. And that was when everything changed. A sound called him from a dark alley, a cry for help. He hesitated for a second, but his feet moved automatically. There, at the end of the alley, stood a man with his back to him, clearly in trouble. Jonas didn't think, didn't reason. The anger that had been building inside him exploded all at once. Before he knew it, his hands were around the man's neck. Only after he fell to the ground, lifeless, did Jonas realize what he had done. Back home, sweating and shaking, Jonas stared at himself in the mirror. The girl was no longer there. In her place was his own reflection, but with a strange, twisted, evil smile. He finally understood. She was not a version of himself. She was his future, a reflection of what he would become. He tried to break the mirror, but it was too late. Cracks spread across its surface, and he saw his own face distorted into hundreds of fragments. Now he knew. Could not go back. The anger, the hatred, the desire to hurt, it was all in him. And finally, he was on the other side.